Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd, and this is the November 2012 water cooler, which is our affectionate name for our Tabs3 Practice Master Virtual User Group. I started by saying I'm a nerd, but I'm being stymied by technology. We have a new phone system. We have computer issues. We have internet issues, but we are here. And so if anything should happen during the course of this broadcast, I am disclaiming any responsibility at this point right now. Today we are doing our annual year-end session. And today at lunch, Leanne asked, well, why are you doing the year-end session in November? And we explained that because in December it's too late. You really need to plan for what you're going to do for year-end in your accounting software and your billing software so that you've gotten all the steps and so that you get everything in line before it's time to do it. That makes you feel a lot better, and it makes things run a lot smoother. So without any further ado, I'm going to move over to this picture here, which shows you something that should be on your screen. It is the control panel for Gotowebinar, and I'm going to explain that you have this little set of buttons that juts off to the left of the main control panel, and this button that looks like arrows pointing to the right is just that, and if you click it, this big control panel here will slide out of the way and give you access to more of your desktop, and therefore if this is covering up any of my screen, that means you'll be able to see the whole screen. Once you do that, this button will instead turn into a button with arrows pointing to the left. As it slides over here, and clicking that button with the arrows pointing to the left will slide this big control panel out again. Now you can raise your hand to ask a question live by clicking this button that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upwards in front of it. That will alert Leanne that you have a question. She'll let us know. She'll unmute you at just the right time. You'll ask your question. We'll make sure you get it answered. And then Leanne will mute you back up so you can go back to eating lunch. If you are instead feeling shy, then you want to make sure that you can see this in order to type a question here. And when you submit that question, you will be able to see, Leanne will be able to see exactly what it is that you are asking, and she will ask the question on your behalf. If you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and ask them. Leanne will make sure they get answered. And Mary Jo is wildly motioning me. I believe that she doesn't have control. So while I am continuing to babble.
I'm locked up here.
Really?
There, it's moving.
Okay, we see those technology issues that we were talking about. They take many forms, like me forgetting to unpause my screen. So very quickly, I will go back here to this little icon and explain that there's the hand-raising button. There's the button that turns into the arrows pointing to the left after it slides this big box out of the way. And here's the place where you can ask questions. Now, if you don't know any of that by now, after having heard it twice and seen it once, we're going to have to just live with it. Now, year-end. Year-end causes a great deal of angst and frustration and fear in a lot of different types of people. The same sort of people that are experiencing greater than normal amounts of frustration might also experience that frustration at month end. There was a time in accounting software and in our accounting software, Tabs and the accounting modules, when closing a month meant that you had darn well better be certain that that month could be closed because you could never go back and do anything. Closing a year was the same way. If you had to make sure you had all your adjusting entries in place, everything exactly the way it needed to be before you close the year. That is not true anymore. It hasn't been for quite some time, but I try to stress this every time we talk about it because there's still some people out there that feel a little bit of trepidation about closing the month or closing the year. Nowadays, closing the month is merely a way of saying, hey, it's not June anymore, it's July. And that doesn't mean you can't go back and post a prior month's entry to adjust something or to put something into the accounting software that should have been in there but wasn't put in before the month was closed. Well, in that regard, closing the year is the same. In other words, you don't have to wait for your accountant to get you the adjusting entries before you can close the year. If we did, we wouldn't be closing our years, or at least some of us wouldn't be closing our years until March or April or even May. Sometimes accountants are a little slow to get those adjusting entries to us. Now, year-end close does differ from month-end close a little bit because there are certain things you do want to make sure you do before you close the year. Mary Jo is going to go into great detail in the different packages about certain things that you want to do before closing the year, just to make sure that you have everything in place to be able to provide whatever answers you need going forward based on the year's data. But it does not mean that you can't go back and post prior year entries after you've closed the year. So you do still need to plan a little bit and be careful about what order you do things in for year-end close. But it's not nearly like it was 20, 30 years ago when I got into this business and closing the year was kind of a rock-solid, Loctite sort of thing that could never be reversed. That's not true. So with that, I am going to take you into Google Chrome, which Mary Jo says she hates, and I'm beginning to hate too, but we won't go there. And I'm going to take you to support.tabs3.com, and I'm going to tell you that the best way to get to what you're looking for is to come here, support.tabs3.com, go to the index, get up here, and type year-end. Actually, all you have to type is year. That takes you to the year-end overview, and at the bottom of the topics list, you're going to see something called year-end overview for Tabs3 software products. Double-click it, and this is going to be the jumping-off point for the 4 articles that Mary Jo is going to help you to understand. Now, once you get here, you can click on one of these articles to go to the specific set of year-end guidelines for each of the packages, AP, Trust, GL, and Billing. And once you get there, you do have the ability to click on Printer Friendly and then print that article. Now, I do want to stress, if you are using version 14 or earlier, some of these say that they apply to version 14, some of them don't. There are, at the bottom of these articles, the ability to go to, prior to version 14, how to do year-end close. Because with version 14, it changed a little bit. So if you're using some very old software, STI might not be supporting version 10 anymore, but at least they still have the instructions out there for how to close the year-end, or how to do the year-end. One other thing to caution you, if we look at, for instance, the last review date, this one's 12/15/11, but some of these were reviewed last month. I don't know which ones, so I'm not going to spend time trying to find them. Be certain that if you printed these out last year, I think your best bet is to just totally reprint them this year. If you are one of those people that can't stand to waste one single piece of paper, I'm not, but certain people here are, then you can tell by looking at the top when the article was last reviewed, and you can compare that to what you've got printed. But make sure you do that, because certain things have changed with version 16.1, 16.2, and you want to make sure you have very up-to-date instructions. And so I am going to stop babbling now, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jo, who, by the way, is crippled today. She's holding the phone with one hand and driving the computer with the other because of our lack of prowess when it comes to our new phone system. So be kind and be patient, and here's Mary Jo to tell you what to do.
He forgets that we women are multitaskers and can do anything.
No, there is no such thing as multitasking.
So anyway, I'm going to talk to you about year-end in each of the different programs. And I'm not going to show these articles on the screen. I'm just going to go through. You can print those and read them. There's a lot more information than I'm going to cover as far as frequently asked questions. And some of these even apply for things that aren't year-end. So I would really suggest you print these articles out. And Paul tells you how to get to the website up here. But you can also get to the knowledge base directly from any of the programs underneath Help, Internet Resources, and then Knowledge Base. And that takes you right out there. You can click on the Index tab, and you can type in year-end and find that. So that you can get to from there, too, if you forget the website. So that is available. So we're going to start in Tabs. Most everybody has the Tabs program. That's your billing software, and we are going to go through just a couple of the procedures that you're going to want to do over there. We're also going to go through trust and accounts payable, and then I'm going to spend some more time on general ledger because that's where most of the things happen that are important that you need to know about. The first thing that you're going to want to do at year end is make an internal backup. Some of you aren't doing that, some are. It's just a good starting place. You can just go under File. You can. We have Platinum, so we have Hot Backup. If you don't, it would just say to make a backup here. You can do that. And that just backs up all of your programs, Tabs, Accounts Payable, General Ledger, whatever programs you have loaded. It's going to make an internal backup as of today. And I would recommend you do that as of December 31st. So, and you should be doing those more frequently anyway. Some of you are doing it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever your normal procedure is, but I would definitely make one of those on December 31st. The other thing that I would suggest in all the programs is to make sure that you run your data file integrity checks. And in Tabs, there's an additional archive data file integrity check. All the other programs have one. Tabs is special. It has two. So you can go ahead and do those. Make sure there are no errors on that before you proceed. And if there are errors, you want to make sure that we can get those cleaned up and taken care of. If you have any questions on that or have trouble with one of the errors or don't know how to fix it, give us a call and I can walk you through that pretty quickly and we can find out what's going on. And that is also something that should be done monthly as well. So even though we're talking about year end, these are some things that can be done monthly to just double check and make sure there's no errors along the way. In Tabs, you can also print your pre-updated statement report. Some of you may not know what this is, but if you run final bills and you have not updated them yet, maybe it got forgotten or something like that, and you try to run another final bill or something happens and you didn't move it to AR and you can't figure out why. Well, this is just a quick report that will give you all of the statements that have been final bills but have not been updated yet. So the pre-update statements report is a good thing to run and make sure that if there's any statements that are waiting to be updated before you go advance the year, that you get it done in December. So that's that. We also would, if you do have statements out there, either update them or unbill them so that you're ready for the next year as well. Any accounts receivable, management and productivity reports that you use, I would recommend that you definitely print all of those as of the 31st. Any unapplied, I guess it's not called unapplied, it's the unallocated payment report. I would run that because that's always in flux. So, if you get a payment January 1st and it applies back, that's going to change your December 31st unapplied report. So you want to make sure as of the 31st you print that report so you have it. And all of these also, Paul is going to tell you a way at the end how to back up everything so that you actually have a copy of the software to go back into, that you can get any of these reports, because if you forget something and in March your accountant wants a certain report and you can't get to it because that information has changed, we're going to get that. He'll show you how to do that. And some of those reports that are changeable or will change constantly are the accounts receivable, the unbilled advances, or any work in process. So you're just going to want to make sure that you try to get everything printed beforehand, but we're going to give you another way to have a backup just in case you miss one. So again, we talked about making the internal backup. And then you're going to go ahead and advance your current reporting month in Tabs. Now, advancing the current reporting month in Tabs is not going to change your GL or your archive journal entries or any of that, so you can take care of that over here. But we don't want to advance that year in General Ledger until after we've archived our client. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. So there's some specific things that you want to do prior to advancing that year. And that's, again, running these reports, doing your data file integrity check, making sure you've got an internal backup, and that should do it for Tabs. Moving on to accounts payable, we have some different things here to do. Again, data file integrity check. Let me get into accounts payable over here. And we are in a test software here, or trial software. So under our utilities, we've got our data file integrity check again, so you're going to want to do that. Any checks that you have out there that you need to post, you're going to want to go ahead and post those. That should be the last day of the current year, so December 31st. You're going to want to make sure you post all those checks. You're going to want to print your check register and your voided checklist. if you want a vendor analysis report or the paid invoices by vendor report. And again, these are, if you don't normally run those, you don't have to, but if you do, these are just some of the recommended reports. You can go ahead and print your 1099. We do have a way, I get this question quite a bit, I've got the same vendors in trust, can I combine those with my AP vendors and get the 1099s? And yes, you can. In trust, there is an export the 1099s, it creates a file, you can combine that and import it over here in accounts payable, and you can get your 1099s done. Something else that I get quite a bit is the 1099s aren't printing properly. Something's going on with the 1099. So you want to make sure underneath the vendor that it's not set to none. You don't want the 1099 to be set to none. They actually have to have a box. And if you don't know what these boxes are off the top of your head, which, I mean, I'm sure we all just remember that, but box 1, 3, 6, 7, and 14, if you go to the little yellow question mark, it will give you help, and it will tell what each one of those boxes mean. One is for rent, one is for something else, and you can pick the correct 1099 info. And then you also can set it to have a minimum. If you go to your 1099 screen, there's a little tab over here. You can, and maybe it's in your customization, I'm sorry, but you can set what you want that 1099 minimum value to be. Is it going to be, I'm going to create a 1099 after $600 or whatever that is. You can set that. And then when you get to your 1099, you've got a report, and then you've also got your forms that you can print. So that is all over here, and you can take care of your 1099s from there. If you have other questions on if they're not working properly or you're just having issues with 1099s, you can let me know. And this article does have several questions that are addressed that were in the frequently asked questions about 1099s. One other main question that I get a lot is, if I clear the vendor analysis totals for the year, will I still be able to print my 1099s? And yes, that does not affect that. A lot of people are very afraid to hit that clear vendor analysis totals button because they don't want to lose that information, and it's not stored there for the 1099. So you can clear your vendor analysis totals, and then that will go ahead and move you forward. And that is over underneath your, I can't remember where it is. It's new. What's that? Under the year end. Yeah, it's under where we're supposed to be. Clear vendor analysis totals right there. So you can go ahead and do that. You can clear the month to date, the year to date, all of that, and it does not affect the 1099s. You don't lose it. So basically that is your accounts payable. Those two are pretty easy, and the trust is pretty simple. Let's go to that next. So I'll go over here to our trust account. And again, over here, data file integrity check. Remember, after you've made a backup for all of the programs, you don't have to do it for each program. It's going to do it for all of the programs that you have installed, so you don't have to hit that backup every single time. Once you've done one, you're good. So you're going to run the data file integrity check. You're going to make sure you've got your bank account reconciliation either canceled or done. You're not going to obviously have December's statement until January, so you can still advance your year in GL and in Tabs without having to worry about that in trust. You don't have to close that or anything like that. You can still reconcile December and January. You want to print a check register by check number, or print a check register by trust account, check register by payee, whichever you normally do. You can print a voided checklist. And then again, if you're integrating with accounts payable, you can also merge that 1099 information in AP. So you can, a lot of times people ask me what the purge is. What does that mean? And I don't think that, and I think Paul would agree, we don't really recommend that you purge any information for any reason. Occasionally you might have, some weird thing that you would do, but I can't even think of any time I've ever had to recommend that you purge it. But I guess there are some firms that would purge that information.
I think that actually goes back to a time when disk space was at a premium, which it no longer is.
Okay. So yeah, we just keep all that information in there in the directory, and so that eliminates that. Otherwise, you could lose some information that you need for 1099s or things like that. If you actually purge information, then it would be gone. But otherwise, that all is there for you to do. So that's accounts payable. Now, before I jump into general ledger, are there any questions so far? Okay, Leanne's shouting over here, no, so I'm going to go on. So general ledger, this is a biggie because this is where all of your data is. And, you know, all your journal entries, all of your banking, everything lives over here. And this is the main one that you're going to really be advancing the year and wanting to be very careful. I can't tell you how many times I have clients call me January 3rd, okay, I'm ready to archive my client, but I've already advanced my year. Well, by then it's too late. If you've advanced your year, there's no way to go back and archive the year that's going to fall off. And what I mean by that is General Ledger stores 3 years of information. If you are in version 14 or earlier, it stores 2. So when you go to advance your year to the next current, or January of 2013, 2010 is going to be falling off. So you're going to lose it. And so if you don't archive that particular, year and save all those journal entries, they're gone. They fall off. If you have any outstanding voided checks or checks that need to be voided that are outstanding, deposits, things like that that have not cleared in your reconciliation that are dated in 2010, they're gone. And then that can create issues with your calculated beginning balance and your statement beginning balance not being in line. So we always want to make sure that we don't have any checks that are dated in the year that are that's going to fall off. So in our case, 2010. So we want to make sure that there's nothing out there. If they are, we either have to void them, because chances are if they haven't cashed that check in 3 years, they're not going to. So you would want to go in and either void that check, delete that journal entry, whatever you need to do to clear that out of there before we advance the year. And then we also want to make sure that we archive that information and have it stored for that 2010. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And basically you're just going to go under your setup and you're going to go to the General Ledger client. And this is, the client number 1 is always your main current live data. So you don't want to do anything with number 1. And in my case, this is my law firm name. This is probably your law firm name here. There's usually no General Ledger path because it's just in the main directory. So this is your live information. You can see right now if I wanted to come in and try to do a new client, I can't. I don't have any other numbers there. If I hit number 2 and try to hit my tab key, it's telling me that I've exceeded my client limit. Well, that's because it will only create as many clients as you tell it to. Now, back in the old days, this was used to keep track of multiple entities. Maybe you had Jensen Martin Anderson in Detroit and you had Jensen Martin Anderson in Toledo, and you wanted 2 separate entities, or maybe this was the LLC and then you have a realty company or something that you're doing. Whatever that is, you could create different clients to have different sets of books, and you can still do that. But what we use this now for a lot is to archive these old years that are going to fall off. So what we have to do is we have to up our limit. So we have to click on here, and right now we have a limit of 1. We're going to just change it to 2, and we're going to say OK. So I just clicked on limits, and I said that I wanted a number 2. Now I'm going to go in, and I'm going to use number 2. And I just have number 2 up in my client number. I can give it a name. This is usually, archive, and then I always name it the year that's falling off. So archive 2010. I can create a folder for that so that it's in a separate location here. So I'm just going to call that archive 2010. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save it. And when I hit save, it's telling me that that path isn't found. Do I want to create it? Yes, I want to create this new folder for my archive 2010. So I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to ask me if I want to copy an existing client's chart of accounts. And what that means is, do I want to copy my live client number 1 and put it into this number 2 for my archive? And I do. I want to copy all of that information in here, so I've got a copy in my archive client. So I say yes. It asks me which client I want to copy. It's number 1, my live data. And then it's asked me what do I want to copy. And I want to copy all of it. I want the journal entries. I want the balances. I want recurring entries if I have any. And then I just say OK. It copies it, and it's complete. And now if I look in here, I have 2 clients. I've got my number 1 and my number 2. If I click on my number 1, I have that information on here, and if I go back into my journal entries, I'd be looking at my number 1. If I wanted to change this, you can actually get back into that archive data by going to your select GLS client. And I could say right now I'm in my number 1 information. If I wanted to see any of that 2010 information, I could put number 2 in here. And I don't want to make it the default. And I can say okay, and that flips me back into any of the journal entries I look at now would include that 2010 year. Otherwise, when I go into any of my reports, my general ledger, I haven't advanced my year yet, but if well, this is old, this is trial data, so you can say I've got 9, 10, and 11. If I had advanced this to 12 and I was in the archive, I would still see 9, 10, and 11 because I'm in the archive database. When I select back to my number 1, then I would be in my 10, 11, 12 because I'd be in my current information. So you can flip back and forth. You can archive as many of these as you need to each year. So that is how you archive and save that information that's going to fall off. Now, Paul has something he's going to talk to you about in later versions, but I'm going to continue on with what we're talking about here for GL. So once you've archived that particular client and that year is not going to fall off anymore, you've got it saved, then you can advance your year. I would print any reports that you normally would print. A lot of times we would suggest the journal ledger, the trial balance, the balance sheet, the income statement. I would run those month to date and year to date, so you've got copies of all of that. If in any of these programs, the general ledger, trial balance, if you get a message at the bottom that you're not in balance, then that's something before you advance I would fix, because you don't want to go into the new year, being out of balance. And it will tell you at the bottom of the report, that if you're out of balance, it'll say it down. It'll even say you're, does not balance. And so if you get that message, go in, find out what it is. A lot of times we'll go back and do it month by month and try to figure out where it is, and sometimes even day by day till we find where the discrepancies are, and then we fix those so that you go forward in a clean year. Now, you're not going to get some of your final journal entries until, like Paul said, sometimes you don't get them until March or April when your accountant gives them to you. And you always want to zero out your retained earnings account, which is your net profit and loss for the new year. And sometimes they won't give you those till later. So what you could do temporarily is we usually create a prior year's retained earnings and move that money, out of retained earnings. You make one journal entry, pop it into the prior year, and then you can go in and move that later with the accountant's journal entries. Or you can wait and just do the journal entries when he gives them to you and zero out that retained earnings account at that time. So that's an option that way. You always want to start fresh, and I have had some firms call me and, they haven't ever zeroed out their retained earnings and their profit and losses are so far off that they couldn't figure out why, and that's one of the biggest things right there is you zero it out at the end of the year. It's a manual thing because usually your accountant's going to give you several accounts to post to throughout the year, so at the end of the year. So those can be made later, so make sure that's in balance. If you do have the errors, give us a call. We can help you find out how to locate those. And then also the reconciliation, if you're doing any kind of a bank reconciliation and you ever get that balance that the calculated beginning and statement balance is out of whack, that's a red flag. Even though your reconciliation balances, and that's okay, it's not okay if you're getting that message. There's something wrong out there, that there's a journal entry that's either not balanced or there's a duplicate somewhere that just hasn't cleared. Something's going on with that. Another thing on the reconciliation that we see quite a bit and why it's not balancing, you might have outstanding deposits that are from January, February, March, April, May, somewhere way back. You should never have outstanding deposits like that. Or there's some weird entries that are out there that are old that you just have not been able to reconcile and you can't figure out how they got into the reconciliation. That's another thing that we go through and, I can help you fix. You want to kind of get your information as clean as possible and as up-to-date and current as possible before you advance. So that's basically, do your normal reports, make sure your data file integrity check is clean, and then, you're ready to advance the year. And if you have any question and you're not sure whether or not you should advance, don't. Call us and we will make sure that you're good to go, and then we'll get to advance to the proper year. Any questions? All right, we'll talk to you in the first 2 weeks in January with any questions when it comes up. And Paul can tell you some other information.
Okay. We're going to talk about a historical backup. Mary Jo kind of alluded to this. Of course, you should make a backup using the regular means within the program before you do your year-end. But this is a different type of backup. That's a backup that if you were to want to restore, it would probably be because the power went out during your update or something like that, and you need to restore your data. The backup we're going to talk about is more of a 2 months from now, the accountant says, I need to know what the AR balance was on January 1st of 2013. And so this is your point-in-time backup, something that you can go back to at any point without disrupting your programs the way they have moved forward into the year 2013. Go back and take a look at the way things were at that frozen moment in time. It's a point-of-view sort of backup. And it involves merely going out to, I'm about to date myself because I almost said DOS, but going out to Windows Explorer, finding your directory, and copying it. Now, for us, we have a whole bunch of STI directories, but let's pretend this is your STI directory. All you would really do is right-click on it and choose Copy, and then right-click over here in the white space and choose Paste. I'm not going to do that because that would start a copy that would take quite some time, 20, 25 minutes to do. Now, a couple of caveats. Everybody has to be out of the software. The software has to know that it is closed. And what I mean by that is if you're on a Windows network, which most of you are, have your IT person help you with this, because there may be these mysterious open files that we don't, that you don't understand, and a lot of times I don't understand why they're still open. But your IT person will know how to close them. So make sure you've got everybody out of the software. Make sure all your files in that STI directory are closed. If you're running Platinum, make sure that your 2 services are stopped. You basically have to have the software in a totally suspended state with nobody in there and without it thinking that somebody's in there with one of the files open before you do what I've just described. The things that I've just described are very simple. You right-click, you choose Copy, you right-click over here in the white space and you choose Paste. But you need to make sure everybody is out, and you need to make sure that there are no open files, or else you'll get to that 24th out of 25 minutes and it'll stop and it won't work because there's a file open somewhere. Now, what you're really doing is creating a whole separate folder. And when you get done with this, you'll have another one called Copy of STI. And if you were to go then into that folder and run the tabs.exe program from within that folder, you would be running tabs the way it was when you made the copy. Now, you have to be very quiet about this. You can't tell Ken at STI, he's the Executive Vice President in charge of making sure nobody does what they're not supposed to do, because you're really only supposed to have 1 copy of the software on your server. But just between you and me, if you're making this strictly for the purpose of keeping a point-of-view sort of backup so that when you're moving into the year 2013, you can go back to that point in time and do anything that you could have done at that point in time. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't think you'd see anything wrong with it. And so enough about that. One other thing that I want to touch on, we happen to know that in version 17, the limit on how many years GL will keep is going away. Version 17, which will be out sometime in 2013, I can't guarantee that, but I'm pretty sure it will be out sometime in 2013, will remove the limitation on how many years of journal data is stored in General Ledger. So what Mary Jo just went through about archiving your client, this will probably be the last time that you do that. Now, what that means then is that if you are using the software for keeping track of multiple sets of books, maybe you also own the building that your firm is in and you lease space to other renters, so there is a separate entity that owns the building and you're doing those books under client number 2, your ability to do that is going to go away. Just a little bit of foreshadowing for those who may be doing this. If that's something that you're doing, please contact me and we'll talk more about how that would work out. So that's it. That's all you need to know about closing your year. Of course, if there's something we haven't covered, feel free to email either Mary Jo or myself. Although I will tell you that there is a reason that Mary Jo went through all these things for you. My clients know when I'm on site and they have a TABS question, they know that they can ask me, but they also know that if I don't know the answer, it's Mary Jo that I'm going to turn to. So be sure to send all those emails to Mary Jo with all those questions that you may run into. Leanne, any closing questions before we wrap this up? Okay, we must have done a very good job of explaining this, or else everybody is asleep. So everybody have a good afternoon, a good rest of the month, and we will see you in December when we will meet again. Thanks much. Bye-bye, everybody.